Fast food used to be the comfort zone of millions of Americans. But in 2025, a silent storm is sweeping the nation, with beloved chains shuttering stores, sometimes overnight. From Jack in the Box to McDonald's own spin-off CosMc, the closures reflect deeper issues affecting our economy and everyday lives. If your favorite local spot suddenly vanished, you're not alone. I still remember when grabbing a burger and fries felt like a small reward for a long day. The glowing signs of our favorite fast food joints were more than just lights, they were landmarks of comfort, routine, and sometimes even celebration. A quick bite on the way home from work. A pancake breakfast with the kids on Sunday mornings. A late-night drive-through stop after the high school football game. It's strange how these simple moments become so deeply woven into the fabric of our lives. But lately, something's changed. The America I knew, the one where a fast food restaurant sat at every other corner, is quietly disappearing. You don't hear the fanfare or the farewells. One day the lights are on. The next, there's brown paper over the windows and a cold, silent, permanently closed sign taped to the door. I started noticing it last year when the Wendy's down the street shut its doors without warning. Then it was the Taco Bell near the highway. Just 2 weeks ago, the Denny's where my wife and I used to go every Christmas Eve for pie, gone. And when I asked around, I found that it wasn't just my town. From coast to coast, Americans are watching their go-to spots vanish. It's not just about missing a burger or a late-night milkshake. It's about losing a piece of familiarity, a spot that held memories. And the reasons behind these closures go deeper than most people realize. This isn't just a string of unfortunate coincidences. Across the United States in 2025, major fast food chains, some decades old, are being forced to scale back, shut down locations, or even disappear completely. We're talking hundreds of stores, thousands of jobs, and millions of disrupted routines. Why is this happening? Well, the storm's been brewing for a while. COVID-19 pushed many small franchises to the edge. Inflation came next, making ingredients, rent, and labor all more expensive. In some areas, rising minimum wages added pressure, while in others, dwindling foot traffic made dine-in service barely profitable. And then there's the shift in how people eat, healthier choices, delivery apps, and a younger generation less attached to traditional fast food. But even knowing all that doesn't make it easier to accept. Because every closure means someone lost a job. A family lost their income. A neighborhood lost a gathering place. And someone like me lost another quiet memory. That's why I wanted to talk about this today. Not to criticize or point fingers, but to lay it out plainly. To help people understand that what's happening to our fast food chains isn't just about business. It's about culture, connection, and change. In this video, I'll take you through 8 well-known fast food and casual dining brands that are closing their doors right now, in 2025. Some are pulling back by the hundreds. Others are disappearing altogether. These are names you've known for years, maybe even your favorites. So sit with me for a few minutes. Let's talk about what's changing, and what it means. Not just for the industry, but for all of us who grew up on dollar menus, drive-thrus, and plastic booths with ketchup bottles. Because when something that's always been there starts to vanish, it makes you think about what we're really losing. There's a Jack in the Box just off the old loop near my town. I used to stop there after church some Sundays, grab 2 tacos and a coffee, nothing fancy. Sometimes I'd see the same young man at the counter, always polite, always smiling, probably saving for college. But last month, I drove by and saw the windows boarded up. A note taped to the door read, "Thank you for 15 great years." That was it. 15 years, gone overnight. Turns out, that wasn't just a one-off. Jack in the Box, a name most folks west of the Mississippi grew up with, is now in the middle of something they're calling the Jack on Track strategy. It sounds hopeful, even optimistic, but the truth underneath it stings. They're closing up to 200 of their underperforming locations by the end of this year. That's not a typo. 200 stores. Most of them quietly. Some already gone. It's part of a broader shift they say is meant to simplify operations and maximize shareholder returns. Those are the kinds of words corporate folks like to use, but for regular people, it just means fewer jobs, fewer places to eat, and more empty buildings with cracked signs and overgrown parking lots. The company's leadership says this move will help them focus on markets that are still strong, places where sales haven't dipped and labor is easier to manage. But that's cold comfort to someone like me, living in one of the towns they're pulling out of. For us, it just feels like we've been abandoned. I read that between 80 to 120 of the closures will happen before December even hits. Many of these stores have been around for decades. In Houston alone, multiple locations have already locked their doors, with more rumored to follow. It's a ripple effect you can feel if you pay attention: less foot traffic at nearby gas stations, fewer part-time jobs for teenagers and retirees. The reasons for the shutdowns make sense if you're looking at spreadsheets. Profit margins are thinner than ever. Food costs are up. Labor is expensive. And honestly, not everyone wants to eat greasy burgers at 10 p.m. anymore. People's habits are changing. That much is true. But even knowing all that doesn't make it easier. For so many of us, Jack in the Box wasn't just another fast food joint. It was the place we'd hit after a late shift or a long drive. It was affordable, always open, always familiar. When I lost my wife 10 years ago, I spent more than a few quiet nights eating alone in one of those red booths, just trying to gather myself before heading home to an empty house. It's strange to think that a place like that, somewhere so ordinary, can hold so many memories. And now, all across the country, they're disappearing. There's talk that this strategy will make the company stronger in the long run. Maybe it will. Maybe someday they'll reopen new stores, sleeker, more modern, more digital. But I can't help feeling like something important is being lost in the process. Because no matter how many mobile apps they launch or kiosks they install, they can't bring back what made those stores feel real: the people who worked there, the regulars who came by, the quiet late nights when the only sound was the fryers humming in the back. We're not just watching a restaurant close. We're watching part of our past get swept away. And once it's gone, it doesn't come back. I remember when the first CosMc opened up near my granddaughter's school. It looked different from your typical McDonald's, brighter, more colorful, almost like it belonged in a cartoon. The menu was odd too. Energy drinks, fruit spritzers, churro fraps, matcha lattes, nothing like the coffee I used to grab from a McCafe. But my granddaughter loved it. She called it the TikTok McDonald's. I didn't think much of it at the time. Just another gimmick, I figured. But I took her there a few times, sat by the window while she ordered things I couldn't pronounce, and we talked. Those moments mattered to me more than she'll ever know. And now, just like that, CosMc is gone. All of it. Every single location across the country, shut down. Doors locked. Menus wiped. The app? Deleted. The rewards program? Cancelled. All of it vanished by the end of June 2025, less than 2 years after the chain even launched. It's hard to believe, really. McDonald's had bet big on this idea, spinning off a brand that was supposed to capture the Gen Z crowd with mood-boosting beverages and quirky snack combos. They named it after an old alien mascot from the 80s, CosMc, hoping to tap into a little nostalgia while aiming for something new. But somewhere between the pastel branding and $6 drinks, the whole thing fell apart. They said it was a test concept. That it didn't meet expectations. That operational complexity and brand confusion made it unsustainable. Maybe they're right. But when I drove by one of the shuttered CosMcs last week, one that used to be packed with teenagers and young couples, it felt like watching someone quietly fold up a dream. No press conference. No farewell message. Just silence. You might think, well, who cares? It was only around for a short while. But what folks don't realize is how many people were behind those counters, learning how to manage a store, building something from scratch. I met a young woman once, 22 years old, who said CosMc was her first real management role. She was proud of it. She said it gave her purpose. And now? She's one of hundreds suddenly without a job. There's a sadness in how fast it happened. Like a flash of color that faded before we could even really understand it. For McDonald's, this might just be a minor loss on a spreadsheet. A course correction, as they put it. But for the communities where these stores briefly bloomed, and for the young people who found their footing there, it's more than that. It's a reminder of how fast things change in this world. How easily companies chase trends, and how quickly they abandon them. And for folks like me, it's another sign that the world's spinning faster than we're ready for. I won't pretend CosMc meant as much to me as the old McDonald's I used to visit with my kids in the 80s, when a Happy Meal still cost $1.99 and came with a toy you couldn't wait to show your friends. But in its own way, CosMc represented something new, something my granddaughter got excited about, something we could experience together. And that made it matter. Now, when she asks me why it closed, I don't have a good answer. All I can say is, things change faster than they used to. And I see her eyes drift toward her phone, already moving on. But I sit there for a moment longer, remembering the time she convinced me to try a dragon fruit lemonade. It tasted awful, but I drank it anyway, just to make her smile. My wife used to say that comfort food doesn't have to come from your childhood, sometimes it comes from where you find peace later in life. For her, that was Noodles and Company. After she retired, she'd take herself there every other Wednesday, order a bowl of buttered noodles, and sit by the window with her knitting. She said it reminded her of simpler times. Warm pasta, soft light, no rush. Just peace. That location closed down last month. And like so many others, it didn't get a proper goodbye. Just a note on the door and silence where there used to be laughter and the clinking of silverware on ceramic bowls. Noodles and Company isn't a chain you hear about as often as the big burger giants, but for folks who appreciated fresh, fast casual meals and a break from greasy food, it was a small sanctuary. It wasn't loud. It wasn't flashy. But it was good. And now, it's struggling. Back in early 2025, the company announced that it would be closing 28 to 32 of its company-owned locations by year's end. That may not sound like much compared to some of the bigger chains, but for a company with just over 450 locations nationwide, it's a major cut. Almost 7% of their stores, gone in 1 year. They say the closures are due to financial losses, and I can't argue with the numbers. Their second quarter report showed a net loss large enough to make investors nervous. The CEO stepped down. The new leadership is shifting focus to fewer, more profitable locations. They've even hinted that another 17 stores may close in 2026. Quietly, Noodles and Company is retreating from markets it once hoped to grow in. One of those markets was ours. I spoke with a young man who used to manage the location near us. He told me the team found out on a Monday and were out by Friday. No transition, no long lead up. Just, this is it. And the hardest part, he said, wasn't losing the job, it was watching the regulars come in, confused, sad, asking if it was permanent. It was. I get it. Business is business. If a store isn't making money, it can't keep going. But it hurts to see places that once felt dependable, safe, even, just vanish. Noodles and Company was never crowded, but that was part of its charm. You could take your time. You could think. You could be. For my wife, that meant everything. In a world that moves too fast, she found her pause in a bowl of pasta. She'd always bring home leftovers for me, mac and cheese with a little sriracha on top. I'd pretend it was too spicy, but I always finished the bowl. I haven't had it since that store closed. Sometimes I wonder if closures like this are about more than profits. Maybe we're losing places that don't fit the new mold. The fast, the flashy, the trending. Maybe there's no room left for places that offer quiet comfort instead of convenience. But I hope that's not true. Because not every meal needs to be delivered in a paper bag. Not every restaurant needs to go viral. Some of them just need to be there, day after day, offering something warm to people who need a moment to slow down. That's what Noodles and Company gave us. And that's why it hurts to see them go. Have any of your favorite restaurants closed recently? Share your experience below. I'm not from Chicago, but I visited enough times over the years to know that Harold's Chicken Shack isn't just a place to eat, it's a piece of the city's soul. You don't find it on fancy travel blogs or in high-end food magazines. You find it in neighborhoods, on corners that have seen generations come and go. It's the kind of place locals argue over, bone-in or boneless, hot sauce or mild, and that kind of passion doesn't come from food alone. It comes from memory. So when I heard that Harold's had filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, my heart sank in a way I didn't expect. You see, my best friend Walter was born and raised in Chicago. Every time he visited me down here in Texas, he'd bring a Harold's t-shirt and talk about how no chicken down south could match it. It's not the food, he'd say. It's the history. And he was right. Founded back in 1950, Harold started as a small operation serving fried chicken in paper bags soaked with flavor and soul. Over the decades, it became a symbol of pride, especially for the black community in Chicago. Now, they're drowning in debt. The filing lists somewhere between $500,000 to $1 million in liabilities. That's enough to threaten the very foundation of a small chain like Harold's. Right now, at least 3 suburban Illinois locations are in danger of closing, and more may follow depending on how the restructuring goes. Some franchises are privately owned, which means not every Harold's will shut down, but when the core is shaking, everything around it starts to feel unstable too. I read through some of the court documents and press statements. Legal talk, mostly. Operational losses, unpaid obligations, debt service. But beneath the jargon is something simple and devastating: a community staple is gasping for breath. And it's not just about money. It never is. Harold's isn't a faceless chain. It's family-run counters. It's the cashier who remembers your name. It's the cook who fries your wings just the way your father liked them. For so many Chicagoans, it's the first place they ever tasted real spice, the spot they went after football games, or the place they took someone on a first date. It's tied to identity. And when something like that starts slipping away, it feels like part of the neighborhood goes with it. Walter called me the day the bankruptcy news broke. He didn't say much, just sighed and muttered, "Damn." That one word said everything. He's 68 now, and watching the landmarks of his youth disappear one by one. It's like someone's erasing a map he's walked his whole life. Some are hopeful Harold's will survive. That the bankruptcy is just a reset, not an ending. I hope they're right. Because places like Harold's aren't just businesses, they're memories you can taste. They remind you of who you were, and the people you were with. And if we lose those places, we don't just lose restaurants. We lose connection. I don't know what will happen to Harold's in the next year. Maybe they'll find a way to restructure, maybe they'll come out stronger. But I do know that if we don't pay attention, if we treat every closure like just another headline, we'll wake up one day and realize all the places that built us are gone. And when that happens, the city doesn't feel like home anymore. There's a certain charm to Torchy's tacos. It's not just the bold flavors or the quirky taco names, it's the energy. The laughter over patio tables, the smell of grilled tortillas, the hot sauce that kicks just enough to make your eyes water. It feels local, even when it's part of a growing chain. At least, it used to. That's why it hit a little harder when I heard that Torchy's was closing both of its locations in the Richmond area, Carytown and Midlothian, effective August 26. Just like that, 2 restaurants gone, leaving only 1 location in the whole region. You wouldn't think a taco shop closing would tug at your heart. But it does. I have a niece in Richmond. She and her husband used to take their kids to the Midlothian spot every Friday evening. She told me it was their weekly ritual: cheap eats, messy hands, and full bellies. The kids loved the trailer park taco, she laughed once. We just loved having a place we could unwind without judgment. Now, with the closure looming, they're already trying to figure out where to go next. But nothing feels quite the same. The company said the closures are part of a strategy to focus on high-performing markets. Richmond, apparently, didn't make the cut. Maybe sales were slow. Maybe costs were high. Maybe it's just business. But to the families who made those places part of their routine, it doesn't feel like numbers on a balance sheet, it feels like a breakup. Torchy's started in Austin, Texas, and over the years it grew into a cult favorite. It had just the right mix of edgy branding and genuinely good food. For a while, it felt like it might become the next big national chain. But somewhere along the way, expansion outpaced sustainability. And Richmond isn't the only city seeing exits. It's a pattern we've seen with so many restaurant brands in the last few years. They grow fast, fill the map, and then start pulling back when reality hits: labor shortages, supply costs, rent hikes. In the end, it's the communities who pay the quiet price. The families who have to explain to their kids why their favorite taco place isn't there anymore. The workers who have to find another job in a shrinking market. What's hardest, I think, is the suddenness of it all. There's no farewell party. No thank you to the regulars. Just a closing date, and then darkness behind the windows. That kind of goodbye leaves something unfinished in your heart. It's not the tacos you miss, it's the memories you built around them. The celebrations, the comfort, the conversations. Torchy's may go on. Maybe in other cities, they'll thrive. But in Richmond, they're leaving behind more than just empty buildings. They're leaving behind stories, like the one my niece told me about her youngest daughter spilling queso on her dad's lap, and everyone laughing so hard they forgot the rough week they'd had. That moment didn't happen in their kitchen. It happened under the red neon lights of a taco shop they trusted. And now it's slipping away. I don't know what will replace it. Maybe nothing will. Maybe the building will stay vacant for a while, or turn into something else entirely. But that memory, of a little girl's laugh, of warm tortillas and soft moments, that stays. Even when the tacos are gone. We never had beaches where I lived, but when I stepped into Bahama Breeze for the first time, it almost felt like I'd found one. There was something about the music, the scent of jerk chicken drifting from the kitchen, and the warm, orange glow that made you forget, for just a little while, that you were in the middle of a shopping center parking lot. That's where my son took me for my 70th birthday. It wasn't fancy, but it felt different. It felt like a place made for relaxing, for slowing down. We shared coconut shrimp and laughed over a couple of drinks. Well, he had rum, and I stuck with iced tea. That place didn't just serve food, it served an atmosphere. And now, it's vanishing. Back in May of this year, Bahama Breeze shuttered 15 of its locations across the country. New York, Nevada, Massachusetts. Even places like Tennessee and parts of Florida where you'd expect a tropical-themed restaurant to thrive. And according to the company behind it, Darden Restaurants, they're not done. Plans are in place to either close, rebrand, or sell the 29 locations that remain. It's not a slow fade. It's a quiet retreat. They say it's because of declining sales and shifting customer behavior. People don't go out for long, sit-down meals as much anymore. They want quick, easy, efficient. But where does that leave places like Bahama Breeze? Places built around the idea of taking your time, enjoying your meal, and pretending, just for a while, that you're on vacation, even if you're not. I called my son when I heard the news. Told him the one we went to was already shut down. He went quiet for a second, then just said, "Dang, I didn't think it'd go that fast." I didn't either. The truth is, Bahama Breeze was never the most crowded place. But it had heart. You'd see couples there celebrating anniversaries, retirees catching up over long lunches, birthday dinners with conga drums and clapping. It was the kind of place where no one rushed you to leave, where dessert wasn't just an afterthought, and where time seemed to bend a little. That matters, especially as you get older and realize how fast everything else moves. I remember the last time I went, there was a couple next to us, must have been in their late 70s. They were sharing a plate of plantains, and the woman leaned in and said, "We came here on our first vacation together. Never thought we'd find one back home." She smiled like she was reliving that trip with every bite. I never forgot that. It makes me sad to think places like this are disappearing, not just because of what they serve, but because of what they represent. Bahama Breeze offered something so rare in today's world, an escape. A brief pause from the daily grind. A place to sit a little longer, talk a little deeper, and remember that life isn't always meant to be rushed. The people who worked there, hosts in floral shirts, waiters who remembered your usual, bartenders who could make you laugh even on bad days, they weren't just staff. They were part of the experience. And when those doors close, those people move on, and those spaces go dark, it feels like a little joy is lost. I don't know what will happen to the rest of the Bahama Breeze locations. Maybe they'll turn into something else. Maybe they'll stay empty for a while. But I do know this, places that make people feel something, that slow the world down even for an hour, are worth fighting for. Because the food may fade, the buildings may change, but the memories? Those stay warm in the heart, like sunshine on a cold day. Would you rather see your favorite chain rebranded, or gone forever? There's something timeless about a Denny's booth at 2 a.m. Maybe you felt it too, that odd comfort of sitting in a half-empty diner, the soft hum of the overhead lights, the scent of bacon grease and burnt coffee lingering in the air. For me, Denny's was never about the food. It was about being awake while the world was quiet. About late-night talks with old friends, pancakes after long road trips, or just a place to sit when you didn't want to go home just yet. Now, even that is starting to disappear. Denny's closed 88 locations in 2024. And they've already announced plans to shut down another 70 to 90 restaurants in 2025. That's over 150 diners gone in 2 years, wiped off the map like they were never there. And most of the ones going now? They're old. They're worn down. The kind of locations people like me remember best. They say it's part of a revitalization strategy. That Denny's wants to modernize, focus on stronger performing stores, invest in technology, digital menus, and brighter spaces. I don't fault them for wanting to survive. But there's something sad about trading familiarity for functionality. I still remember the one we used to go to every Sunday after church, me, my wife, our 2 kids in their itchy dress shoes, always begging for chocolate milk. The waitress, Deborah, would have it ready before we even sat down. She knew our names. She watched our kids grow up. And when my wife passed away, she was the first person outside my family to offer her condolences, with a warm plate of pancakes and tears in her eyes. That location shut down last fall. I drove by recently, and the sign was still there, half-lit, flickering, like it didn't quite know it was done. The windows were dark. The parking lot was cracked and empty. I sat there for a while in my truck, remembering all the laughter we left inside those walls. All the slow mornings and late nights. And I realized, it wasn't just a restaurant. It was a second home during the seasons of life when we needed one. These days, Denny's says people want quicker service, cleaner designs, less time at the table. Maybe that's true. Maybe the world really is moving too fast for diners that let you sit and sip coffee for hours. But part of me hopes they're wrong. Because there are things you can't rush. Grief. Conversation. Healing. Connection. And for decades, Denny's gave us a space for all of those. A man I met recently, 78 years old, a retired trucker, told me he used to time his routes around Denny's. He said it was the only place where he knew he'd get a hot meal, clean restroom, and someone who'd talk to him like a human being, no matter what state he rolled into. He looked down when he said, "Now it's all cold machines and no one says hi." That stuck with me. We like to talk about efficiency these days. About algorithms and profit margins. But when we lose places like Denny's, we're not just losing scrambled eggs and coffee refills, we're losing gathering places. We're losing traditions. We're losing spots where generations sat together in vinyl booths and passed stories over syrup and sausage links. Denny's may survive in name. The modern ones may sparkle brighter and run smoother. But I can't help feeling like something essential is slipping away, the warmth, the familiarity, the soul of it all. Because sometimes, all a person needs is a hot meal, a quiet booth, and someone to say, "Take your time." California always had its own kind of flavor, sun-drenched afternoons, ocean breezes, and food that tasted like it came straight from the sand and salt. That's what Rubio's coastal grill captured. Not just Baja-style fish tacos, but the feeling of coastal freedom. Light, fresh, unpretentious. You'd walk in, and it smelled like lime and grilled mahi, not like deep fryers and grease. So when I heard they were closing 48 locations across California, it didn't feel like just another chain scaling back, it felt like a wave had pulled part of the state's soul back out to sea. Rubio's was born in San Diego in the early 80s, when Ralph Rubio brought the fish taco north of the border and changed the way California ate lunch. It was never loud. It didn't scream for attention. But if you knew, you knew. And those who knew loved it. In May 2024, they filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, again. It wasn't their first time. But this time, the impact was deeper. 48 restaurants, most of them in California, were shut down. Fresno. Sacramento. Ventura County. Parts of the Bay Area. Just gone. For many, that was the only Rubio's for miles. They said it was about economics. Rent prices. Labor costs. Inflation. All the usual suspects. But when a brand that is California starts pulling out of California, something's wrong. And I can't help but think it's not just about the numbers, it's about what's happening to local culture. A friend of mine from Sacramento called me after his neighborhood Rubio's closed. He used to go every Friday with his teenage son. It wasn't fancy, he said, but it was ours. He told me how his boy would always get the shrimp burrito, extra guac, and sit outside even if it was cold. Now, he said, we're just another family looking for a new spot. There's a grief in that. A quiet one. Because it's not a death, not a disaster, just a slow erasure of routine, of comfort, of identity. I read that Rubio's still has a few dozen locations left, mostly outside the hardest-hit regions. Maybe they'll survive. Maybe they'll pivot to digital or smaller kitchens. But I wonder what's left when you get the heart of where you began. The California they came from is changing too, rising rents, empty storefronts, a shrinking middle class. Maybe Rubio's couldn't compete with the flashier fast casual brands, or maybe people just stopped noticing the quiet good things around them. I remember eating at a Rubio's once with my daughter when she was still in college. We sat outside, watching the sunset through the palm trees, sharing a basket of chips and salsa. She told me about a boy she liked. I told her to follow her gut, whether that meant the boy or the burrito. We laughed until it hurt. Now that location's gone too. And what I've come to realize is that places like Rubio's weren't just places to eat. They were backdrops to moments, small ones that don't seem important until they're part of your story. That's why it matters. If your state lost a favorite food chain, how did people react? I'd love to hear what that place meant to you. Sometimes I drive past the places that used to be, those old fast food joints with faded signs, paper still taped on the windows, weeds curling up through the cracks in the parking lot. Most folks don't even notice them anymore. But I do. Because to me, they aren't just abandoned buildings. They're ghost stories, silent reminders of all the everyday moments we once shared in booths and at counters, over fries and coffee, laughter and silence. This past year, watching these restaurants vanish one by one, Jack in the Box, CosMc, Noodles and Company, Harold's, Torchy's, Bahama Breeze, Denny's, Rubio's, it felt like watching old friends fade into the background of a changing world. Each one had its own rhythm, its own reason for being, its own place in someone's heart. Now we're left with fewer places that feel familiar. Fewer places that don't rush us. Fewer that understand the quiet value of staying the same. Fast food in America is evolving, there's no denying that. Chains are shrinking to survive, shifting to digital orders, automation, sleeker spaces, and reduced footprints. They're chasing speed, chasing cost savings, chasing trends. And maybe that's what today's market demands. But in the process, we're losing something unmeasurable. We're losing the third spaces, the spots that weren't home or work, but something in between. The places where friendships were born, fights were resolved, kids grew up, and old men like me found peace in a quiet booth with a hot meal. Places where the food wasn't always perfect, but the memories were. And I can't help but wonder, when did all of that stop being enough? These closures, hundreds across the country, aren't just business decisions. They're reflections of a country changing faster than most of us can keep up with. Of economic pressures that push out the small joys. Of a generation growing up in a world where to go has replaced sit down, and where efficient has replaced warm. But still, I hold out hope. Because people remember. We carry those moments with us, the birthday dinners at Bahama Breeze, the late-night talks at Denny's, the quiet lunches at Noodles and Company. And maybe, just maybe, we'll find new places to create those memories again. Maybe smaller, local spots will rise up. Maybe we'll start to value not just the food on the table, but the feeling in the room. Until then, I'll keep remembering. The hum of a milkshake machine at midnight. The crunch of a fresh taco after a long day. The way my wife used to sneak a fry off my plate when she thought I wasn't looking. These memories are mine now. The restaurants are gone. But the feeling remains. Maybe you've lost one of your spots, too. Maybe you're still holding onto the receipts in your glove box, or an old to-go menu tucked in a drawer. I hope you are. I hope you remember what it meant. Because while buildings fade and signs come down, memories stay warm in the heart. Megaphone, do you believe people change when it's too late? Or do we just forget what really mattered until it's already gone? Tell me below.